Hello everyone, this is Anjali Tyagi. Today I am going to give you the summary of the chapter A Triumph of Surgery, which has been taken from Footprints Without Feet, book of class 10th. In first part of the chapter, we have studied that Tricky started to recover. Again, after sniffing him for a moment, all of them left for the garden where Tricky followed them. Later in the evening, the narrator was present at the dinner time and was watching all of them, especially Preston, as he was slopping the food. All of them were eating with great speed because they knew that if they didn't finish quickly, then the other dog, after finishing his meal, would come to eat their meal. When everybody finished their food, Tricky went around looking at the shining bowls and also licked a few bowls. The very next day, an extra bowl was put for him, and the narrator was happy to see him running towards his ball. Then he started getting better really quickly. He did not require any medicine and started playing with the other dogs the whole day. They all used to play with each other, bump into each other, walk over each other, and squash each other. All of the other dogs accepted him as a family member, although he was very different from others as he was very well taken care of by his owner. And the others were not. He also used to fight for his meals with his fellow dogs who were much larger in size than him. At night, he also hunt rats in the hen house. He was enjoying as he had never done such things before. All the while, Mrs. Pumphrey used to call more than 12 times a day to inquire about Tricky. Mr. Harriot used to avoid questions about the court, bats, etc. But he told her that Tricky was doing very good and was recovering very fast. Mrs. Pumphrey wanted Tricky to recover fast. She started sending 2 dozen eggs every day for him, but Mr. Harriot and his partners would have 2 eggs each for breakfast. Then, to improve the quality of blood, Mrs. Pumphrey started sending in bottles of wine. Then it became Mrs. Harriot's habit to have 2 glasses of wines before lunch and a few along with it. Mrs. Pumphrey started sending in brandy. At that time, Mr. Harriot was not able to believe that Mrs. Pumphrey actually wanted them to give brandy to Tricky. They shared it amongst themselves. Some days, Mr. Harriot used to feel very happy as he would start his day with extra eggs. Then he would have a few glasses of wine in the afternoon and then ending the day with brandy in the evening. Because of all the things that were being sent for Tricky, Mr. Harriot was really tempted to keep him as a permanent guest at the surgery. He really wanted that Tricky should stay with them forever. But then he realized that Mrs. Pumphrey, who was like a mother to Tricky, was really suffering and really wanted Tricky to come back soon. After 15 days, Tricky was ready to go back home, and Mr. Harriot called up Mrs. Pumphrey to come and pick him up. Within a few minutes, a long black car came outside. When the chauffeur opened the door, Mrs. Pumphrey was sitting inside, really nervous as well as excited. She was asking with a nervousness in her voice that, was Tricky really better? To which the doctor replied positively. Then Mr. Harriot went inside to get Tricky. When Mr. Harriot went to the garden behind the house, he saw all the dogs moving around the garden and Tricky was sitting between them. He had recovered wonderfully in 2 weeks. He was looking much healthier, playing with the other dogs, and his chest was touching the ground. He had become a good muscular dog within 2 weeks. When Mr. Harriot took Tricky to the front of the house, He saw that the chauffeur was still holding the door of the car, and as soon as Tricky saw his mother like mistress, he was overjoyed. He ran away and jumped into the lap of Mrs. Pomfrey and started licking her face, barking in excitement. While all this was happening, the chauffeur and Mr. Harriot got all his stuff out to the car, which had not been used during the treatment in the past 14 days. When Mrs. Pomfrey was leaving, she leaned out of the window and said to Mr. Harriot, with tears of joy in her eyes, that she could not thank him enough for what he had done. This is a triumph of surgery, meant that the treatment that was given to Tricky had been successful. Let's discuss Let's discuss about the message given by the author. The lesson imparts a message for the ones, suggesting them to own the responsibilities. They should not shower unnecessary love to their young ones, as it might be fatal to their lives. Mrs. Pomfrey was a rich woman who loved her dog very much. She loved to live a comfortable and lavish life and also wanted her dog to spend a similar one. She had maintained a wardrobe full of fancy fur coats, dresses, beds, etc. for Tricky. Apart from this, she used to overfeed Tricky out of her love and concern. She used to serve him cod liver oil, malt between the main meals, and Horlicks after dinner to give him strength. She never realized that Tricky was a greedy dog and this would spoil his health. Her overfeeding worsened Tricky's condition. This made the dog lazy, inactive, and obese. He used to lie on the rug and pants all day long. Mrs. Pomfrey fed him excessively, spoiling Tricky's health to such extent that he had to be hospitalized. Even in hospital, she continued to shower Tricky her love by sending eggs, wine, and brandy. Her fondness and care for Tricky proved that excess of everything made him fall sick. It is the end of the chapter. Thank you very much for listening me.